On the 8th floor of a stepped, jade-tinted fortress beside the Thames, every letter the Chief of Britain's Secret Intelligence Service signs still begins with a single emerald-inked C. The quirk honors Sir Mansfield Smith Cumming, the wooden-legged naval officer who in 1909 co-founded the Secret Service Bureau and sealed his cables the same way. In that flourish lie 116 years of institutional memory, part tradition, part talisman against the peril of forgetting how the whole clandestine edifice began. 1. Genesis, the Bureau and Seas Green Ink, 1909-1918. In Edwardian London, the War Office fretted about German spies mapping dockyards. The solution, proposed by Home Secretary Herbert Asquith, was the two-branch Secret Service Bureau, Vernon Kell's Home Section, Counter-Espionage, and Cumming's Foreign Wing. Cumming soon cultivated a handful of globe-trotting adventurers, Sidney Riley, W. Somerset Maugham, and ran them from a cramped office off Whitehall. When he scrawled every man his own stylo beneath notes on invisible ink, seamen proved handy until the smell betrayed it. The ethos was set. Improvisation first, accounting later. Wikipedia Room 40 in the Code War. The Great War enlarged the Bureau into MI1C and then the familiar MI6. Cryptanalysts in the Admiralty's Room 40 cracked German naval ciphers, feeding Cumming targets for sabotage and disinformation. A prototype signals intelligence partnership with which GCHQ staff would feel at home a century later. Wikipedia, blood and bureaucracy. Even early victory stories carried a cost. 22 German agents arrested through MI6 tip-offs were executed in Britain. The Bureau's Dublin networks were later decimated when Michael Collins's gunmen assassinated 14 officers on Bloody Sunday, 1920, forcing a hasty pullout and revealing just how lethal a blown cover could be. Wikipedia 2, Between Two Wars. Thrifty Shadows, 1909-1939. The Treasury slashed intelligence budgets, yet the service clawed relevance by mapping communist networks and supporting imperial policing from Cairo to Delhi. Chiefs George Mansfield Smith Cumming and then Hugh Sinclair cultivated unofficial patrons, industrialists, newspaper barons, who underwrote operations Parliament would not. Ian Fleming later drew on this raffish era for Bond's silk-lined escapades, though few of Sinclair's hard-pressed case officers could have afforded a martini shaken or stirred. 3. Total War and the SOE Cousins, 1939-1945. When Churchill demanded sabotage to set Europe ablaze, Whitehall created the Special Operations Executive SOE for guerrilla warfare, leaving MI6 to classic espionage. Relations were prickly, country cousins squabbling over the silver, yet the liaison yielded triumphs such as the double-cross system, in which MI6 ran German agents back against the Reich, and meticulous deception plans that helped mask the D-Day beaches. Wikipedia, meanwhile, station chiefs from Bern to Madrid mounted economic warfare, traced U-boat wolf packs and negotiated prisoner exchanges, all with one eye on post-war Soviet ambitions already casting a long shadow over liberated Europe. Cold fronts, the Cambridge Firestorm, 1946 to 1963. Peace arrived tattered. Inside MI6 itself, Kim Philby, Donald McLean, Guy Burgess, Anthony Blunt, and probably John Cairncross, the infamous Cambridge Five, fed secrets to Moscow Center for decades. Their treachery unmasked a structural flaw. The service trusted old-school ties more than systematic vetting. Revelations in the 1950s savaged morale, shredded U.S. trust, and triggered painful reforms in recruitment and internal security that echo to today's vetting boards. Wikipedia. Yet MI6 also scored Cold War coups, extracting Khrushchev's secret speech via Polish military intelligence, running Penkovsky, the GRU colonel whose missile range data steadied Kennedy during the Cuban crisis, and bankrolling Afghan tribes 2 decades before the CIA repeated the trick. 5. Coming in from the cold. Public faces and legal footing, 1964 to 1994. Post-Philby chiefs. Dick White, later Sir Colin McCall, tightened professional training while technological revolutions made hiding harder. In 1980, press leaks forced the government to confirm McCall's name. Then a renegade officer, Peter Wright, published Spycatcher, hauling internal methods through Australian courts. The dam of official secrecy was cracking. Recognition finally arrived with the Intelligence Services Act 1994, which for the first time placed MI6 on a statutory basis, defined its overseas role, and created parliamentary oversight through the Intelligence and Security Committee. The act also codified warrant procedures, threading covert action within a democratic rule of law scaffold, even if actual operations remained beyond open debate. Wikipedia, a citadel on the Thames. Symbolically, the same year MI6 moved from anonymous Century House to the eye-catching SICE building at Vauxhall Cross, a postmodern ziggurat by architect Sir Terry Farrell, opened by Queen Elizabeth II on the 14th of July 1994. What critics dubbed Legoland announced that the service, though secret, was no longer invisible. Wikipedia globalized intelligence, Balkans to broadband, 1995-2010. With the Soviet monolith gone, MI6 confronted chaos. Ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, nuclear smuggling from the ex-USSR, and Islamist plots gestating in Afghan camps. Liaison diplomacy surged. By 2001, the service maintained partnerships with over 100 foreign agencies, trading tip-offs for influence. 9/11 refocused priorities on counter-terrorism. MI6 officers rode U.S. helicopters in Afghanistan, recruited sources in Waziristan, and helped disrupt Heathrow and transatlantic airline bomb plots. Successes were tempered by allegations of complicity in extraordinary rendition and intelligence-based justifications for the Iraq WMD case that proved tragically flawed, episodes that later watchdog reports criticized for caveats lost in political heat. 7. Digital battlegrounds and a Twitter age C, 2011-present. Where once fieldcraft meant dead drops in Vienna, today it includes scraping big data troves and running online illegals. The 2015 Investigatory Powers Act clarified bulk intercept rules. MI6 analysts now swim oceans of metadata, while classical HUMINT officers still pound foreign pavements under diplomatic, commercial, or deep covers. Oversight lies with the Investigatory Powers Tribunal and the ISC, whose redacted annual reports have become must-reads for Kremlinologists of Westminster. Wikipedia. In 2020, career diplomat Sir Richard Moore, a Turkic-speaking former ambassador, took the helm. Moore's public speeches, plain-spoken tweets, and invitation for tech startups to steal my secrets before our adversaries do mark an era of cautious transparency unimaginable to his predecessors. Under him, MI6 pivoted resources toward Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Chinese cyber talent harvesting, and the contested infosphere of the Middle East, even hinting at support for Ukrainian covert action to set Europe ablaze once more. 9. Culture, myth, and the Bond effect. No intelligence agency has endured a bigger pop cultural shadow than MI6, courtesy of Ian Fleming's suave assassin. Yet real officers wryly note the true model for M is coming, right down to the green ink. Recruitment surges followed each Bond movie, though HR departments spend months disabusing applicants of expectations involving Aston Martins or Walther PPKs. Wikipedia 10. Reckonings, Scandals, Scrutiny, Survival. Cambridge 5 proved ideological security lapses can linger for decades. Iraq WMD dossier illustrated the danger of politicized analysis. Rendition allegations forced a public apology and tighter ministerial sign-off. Each storm tightened legal and ethical guardrails even as adversaries grew less constrained, a paradox that defines liberal democratic espionage. 11. Looking forward, quantum, climate, and gray zone wars. Tomorrow's MI6 will battle quantum-proof encryption, climate-driven instability, AI-generated disinformation, and hostile sub-threshold actions, pipeline sabotage, electoral hacking, biolab leaks. The service's answer, according to Moore, is a fusion of algorithms and people who can look a source in the eye at 3 a.m. in a hostile capital. Whether that blend succeeds will test the balance between innovation and the archetypal lone officer still slipping into a cafe looking for the tail. Timeline sidebar, key dates. 1909, Secret Service Bureau founded. 1914-18, MI1C supports Admiralty's Room 40 SIGINT. 1920, Dublin Network assassinated on Bloody Sunday. 1939-45, MI6 partners with SOE, double-cross deception. 1951-61, Cambridge spies unmasked, U.S. liaison shaken. 1994, Intelligence Services Act and move to Vauxhall Cross. 2001-05, 9/11 response, Afghanistan and Iraq operations. 2010, first authorized MI6 history published, Keith Jeffrey. 2020, Richard Moore becomes C, expands public outreach. A mirror in the dark. MI6 began as one man in a ledger in Whitehall, cajoling gentlemen adventurers to snoop for king and country. It is now a bureaucratized, digitally enabled arm of statecraft whose successes will seldom be known and whose failures explode across headlines. The service's centurial arc, from Cummings' wooden leg to Moore's Twitter feed, traces the story of modern Britain itself: empire, retreat, reinvention, and the uneasy conviction that information, not iron, underwrites survival. The green ink signature endures, a quiet reminder that in intelligence work, heritage is not nostalgia, it is the operating manual. In the silent corridors of Vauxhall Cross, yesterday's lessons bleed into tomorrow's gambits, and the promise first made in 1909 still stands. We will know so that others may sleep.